This is the bribing Boris Johnson daily. Bribing Boris Johnson daily graph. And this is part A of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel. This one is being broadcast timed at 09:30 GMT. We have started a few minutes before, but that is the time, 09:30 hours GMT. And the corruption of Fleet Street is absolutely rampant. Well, Fleet Street corruption, let's say. Not corruption by somebody else, but Fleet Street's own corrupt coverage and cover-up of the truth. So what we have got here, we've got this metro as well, but this is the one that you pick up at mainly London Underground and train stations, and they're going absolutely fanatical. And in the Walthamstow, Leighton, etc. Guardian, it's a local Guardian series, not to be confused with the Daily Guardian that used to be the Manchester Guardian. But this one costing is, normally these are now giveaways. They're only paid for if they're picked up in a shop, but as we did today. Essentially, their 75 pence is not really realistic. But the reason why we did this one is to check on the local news in the northeast London area. And that is not to say that the contents or the editorial integrity is acceptable or is a truth-telling local paper. That's not the case. But we have a piece about a local council. That's the one. A family was offered single room as their home now. I know that lunacy and irrationality and criminal irresponsibility and cruelty and lack of compassion, these are not values that are upheld or are cited or as used as the criteria or basis or measure to judge the behavior of local councils or regional assembly like the London Assembly, or the behavior of individual government departments. The two central government departments that come closest to people's daily lives, although others do, but these ones come closest in terms of the frequency of the contacts day to day. These are the ones that are, one is the renamed Ministry of Housing, which is what this one is about, or this one refers to, relates to, or this one should be kind of examined by looking at the behavior of the role and the behavior of the Ministry of Housing. And the Ministry of Housing is, of course, fronted by one of the currently in-post holders of the cabal positions, the cabal being fronted by Boris Johnson. This one is Robert Jenrick. Now, as students of kind of corruption, British political corruption would know, Jenrick was in the news when he was caught being involved in hastily overturning the kind of rejection of the planning permission. To the crook that owned the Isle of Dogs premises before he sold it as part of his disposal of the properties in the Isle of Dogs that is based in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets. So he is Richard, the criminal. And there is nothing in the behavior of the local councils, including the council concerned with the particular misconduct of and by Robert Jenrick, Tower Hamlets Council. And as we say, exclusively, as part of the exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street, and by which we mean the exclusive diagnosis of the sick-making, lying, corrupt, racist role of the collection of papers called Fleet Street. That is the daily papers published from various addresses in London, but they are still associated with Fleet Street, where many of the papers used to have their actual official addresses in Fleet Street, London, EC1, EC4, which is on the one side, few hundred years from St. Paul's Cathedral, and on the other, a few hundred years from the Strand, near which the main High Court's complex is based and sited, not far from the University of London's constituent college called King's College. The King's College is one of the colleges where they specialize in promoting war and war trade. The course studies war studies. Actually, they don't study war, they perpetuate wars and justify wars. Now, the latest edition of the Fortnightly Private Lie, edited by the Jan Pissoff, the racist crook Jan Pissoff, has got a piece, has got a stupid, absolutely stupid piece. This is dated today as well. It's number 1551, 9th of July, until the 22nd of July 2021. So this one has, we notice the new price tag. Now it could have been increased. The price could have been increased in the last issue. Didn't notice, but this one is noticeable, £2.50, which is 50 pence more than the cover price has been for a few years now. So this is the most recent kind of increase in the price. Now, in the contents, I mean, we should go to the contents in a minute, but on the front page, the cover is absolutely useless, because what they decided to do the cover on is to kind of cater to various needs, and therefore it's a failure. The private lie cover only succeeds if there is one single issue. And I say that on the basis of my study of private lie over many decades. Every fortnight I have to suffer it because of for the sake of evidence and factual accuracy and references. Now they've got one about Matthew Hancock, another one is the Starma, one of the other Rishi Sunak. The other one is Sajid Javid, and the last one about the liar, congenital liar Boris Johnson. It's a complete mess. It doesn't have any impact on anything. And the thing we said about this going into in a minute is the one in the section called HP source. This is supposed to be the section or the column or the pages, about normally 2 pages, about politics in terms of government and parliament, etc. House of Parliament or Houses of Parliament, source, HP source. And this one has got on page 13, where the section begins, the third item, headline Popular Uprising. Now, popular uprising is, of course, a complete abuse of the original popular uprising, the popular councillors in 1921, who actually went to jail by upholding the rights of their constituents in poverty. And they were sent to jail by the crooked, corrupt conservative government and the conservative High Court. Now, this one, Popular Uprising, is an offensive headline because it abuses that, and there is no reference, and there has been no reference in private lie about the popular councillors in their own rights. This one is a promotion of Git George Galloway and the corrupt Lutfur Rahman, and also, in a way, a promotion of Afsana Begum, who is the peg for this particular content, because Afsana Begum is due in 12 days' time to appear in a Crown Court, Snaresbrook Crown Court. And she denies all charges, and they're saying that if she were to be found guilty and sentenced to at least a year in prison, she would be disqualified from serving as a member of parliament, and a by-election would be triggered. And their whole piece is corruptly, ignorantly stupid. Galloway is being overhyped here. Like this one, it says, in 2005, Galloway won the neighboring Bethnal Green and Bow seat when he defeated the sitting Labour MP Una King. He did not defeat Una King. The voters defeated her, as we have been saying. Because Una King had refused to support the constituents' preference for backing the rights of the Palestinians. And when she was challenged why she did that, she refused to back the rights of the Palestinians, Una King said that, well, that is my choice. And if the voters don't like it, then they know what to do with their choice when the next election comes. And the election came very soon. And the election was followed by very clear, open campaign against Una King. Nothing to do with George Galloway. Galloway behaved as a parasite. He surfaced in the constituency, having heard about the likelihood of the constituency, majority of the electors, majority of the Labour Party members wanting to vote Una King out. That is the sequence. Galloway never mattered in Tower Hamlets, and he will never matter in Tower Hamlets again. Galloway was a beneficiary as a parasite of the clear preference by the electors to kick out Una King. That is what happened. So what we shall be doing in this part and the later parts is go chapter and verse through the stupid, absolutely ignorant, misleading, corrupt piece by the crooks, whoever wrote this idiotic thing in Private Lie called Popular Uprising. This one is absolutely wrong. And it shows that although they have a kind of piece or a section called Street of Shame, which is supposed to be about kind of a critical look at the conduct of Fleet Street, the newspapers, not the fortnightly or the weeklies, but Private Lie completely miserably fails. And we shall do a review. We shall open a regular series section in this broadcast about Private Lie. So they've got regular one, HP Sauce, Street of Shame, and some other regular kind of features. And we shall go through them every single kind of issue. So the Daily Star is running this front page as the cheeky Italians accuse our heroic three lions of play acting to win a penalty. We ask, what have the Romans ever done for us? And that is the front page. And that's the list of things that they say cheekily the Romans did. Now, if you take away the listed items, there is nothing left of England at all, because it lists aqueducts, sanitation, roads, irrigation, and they say education. It's not our word that we are quoting them. Nice wine, public order, lovely baths, beautiful women, unfeasibly swayed men, and pineapple-topped pizzas. They say we may have made up that last one. And this car has got another piece about backing racists under the apparent campaign against wokes. Well, there is a piece called The Hits Parade, which is about assassinations that shocked nations. They don't run the piece about the assassination yesterday of the president of Haiti. The latest on that one, online, accessible online now as we broadcast, is that at least four of the suspected assassins have been shot dead by the police in Haiti. And they're looking for at least two more. And there is a promotion for the racist conman, Jeremy Paxman. He said that his ancestors were dead at his age. What he's saying is that they were dead of Parkinson's disease at the age he is now. What is his age as he's admitting now? He's saying he's 71 now. So, Paxman is saying that he's luckier than his ancestors who died younger than him. And here the Daily Mirror is saying that 4 Haiti assassins die in gunfire with police. And they are having a go at Afghanistan. Now, what they don't talk about when they talk about Afghanistan is, of course, the main country, Afghanistan, because there have been quite a few boundary changes caused by various interference from various imperialists. Afghanistan actually has survived for thousands of years. Survived attempts by Western imperialists. And that is what they're trying to work out. They can't work out how the Afghans can send would-be imperialists packing. And this is something to do with the unique history of the people mainly making up Afghanistan. And Joe Biden is reported today as saying that defending Afghanistan, whatever the defense entails, of course, is another matter, but defending Afghanistan is not worth more American lives. And so he's almost completing the withdrawal of the American troops from Afghanistan on the basis that Afghanistan is not worth losing more American soldiers' lives for. And the question is, if we said what Biden is saying now, if we said that 20 years ago, would anyone have taken any notice? because precisely that is what we said. Not the only thing we said, but we said that as well. We said that they will not be able to, the Americans, George W. Bush and Tony Blair, or the Russians, they would not be able to beat the Afghans. Well, they overrated the image and overhyped the image that they had distorted and kind of twisted and perverted. And they said it was the Taliban's. The Taliban, the fact that this word, this concept, is still in use shows the depth of stupidity and ignorance on the part of the entirety of the population being brainwashed into using Taliban. Taliban, the root word is talab, is to order or demand. And this is, talab is to seek knowledge, enlightenment. How have the racists and liars and morons and their servile kind of stooges in Afghanistan, how have they got away with this stupidity? Taliban is based on scholarship, education and learning. And what they have done, they have made the demand and the culture based on education as a culture based against education, as a culture based against women being allowed education and learning. Now, why do they do that? Because if they told the truth and if they admitted the truth about Afghanistan, they would not be able to invade it, would they? Now, the Times newspaper hasn't published any letter from anyone who's an African or an Asian, most certainly not an Arabic name. Yet the paper contains so-called news, comments, an opinion concerning the whole world. How is it that the Times is edited by willfully admitting that it was in denial of the whole world when it came to the whole world being given a space to express an opinion, have a platform to express an opinion, to correct at least some of the lies that the Times carries? All the letters are by European names. And that gives the game away. The Times is not the newspaper of record. And it's racist, corrupt, in denial, in hiding. And look at this heading, this heading. It says holiday plans, and underneath that, there is a 2-line clarifier subheading. The scrapping of quarantine requirements for the double jabbed is welcome. But further action is needed before most Britons can enjoy a stress-free foreign break, or can enjoy a stress-free foreign break. Now this is dubious and contradictory and stupid. Now, foreign break, read that again. Foreign break is not written within quotation marks. Foreign break is written without quotation marks, which means that there is no qualification. It is being expressed as a free from virus kind of environment they are taking for granted. So the foreign means the whole of the world, the rest of the world outside of Little England, the whole planet. And they're saying that the planet is now safe. How callous and stupid can the Times leader writers be? On every page, on every item, on every aspect of the virus or the state of the virus today in Britain and in the rest of the world, so-called foreign parts, there are many reports and accounts and explanations that the virus is not only not gone, but it is on the increase in many parts of the world, including, staggeringly, the fact that Tokyo, the Olympics, will not be held before spectators because the spectators have been banned. Is Japan part of the foreign that the stupid editorial column, opinion writer or writers have stated in the first editorial of the three carried in today's paper? Of course not. Japan is not part of the mysterious, not our foreign lands. It is part of the foreign lands. And restrictions and quarantine and all the other limitations that the creeps fronted by Boris Johnson have been now ending. They're in place and they will be in place. so much of the Times is kind of columnists and named writers. Output is absolute rubbish. Well, there is a very subtle admission that the English against the Italians may not get away as easily as they're claiming. And this patriotic overdoing on the front page by the bribing Boris Johnson graph. This is in keeping with the Brexiteering, corrupt, racist, Little Englander kind of agenda and narrative they have been desperate to run and have nearly run with validity so far. So there is a matte cartoon showing a travel agent in conversation with two customers. And the caption is, if England win on Sunday, we will be put into the insufferable category. And other countries will ban us from visiting them. Now there's a chink of light in the darkness of racist stupidity. Because that is absolutely what might happen actually. And back to Afghanistan and the bribing Boris graph says Johnson defends troops exodus despite grim days for Afghanistan. Now Johnson despite the fact that he can read some ancient classic Greek, doesn't know the history of Greece or the history of Rome, Italy. Because whenever imperialists and invaders have come from wherever they have come to invade and occupy and defeat the Afghans, they have been met with grim reality. So grim and Afghanistan being targeted by imperialists from the West have been going on together for thousands of years. And that's what the stupid Daily Telegraph should say, but it doesn't have the understanding or the enlightenment to say that. And there is nothing in the piece about the imperialism and the stupidity of imperialists. And the same stupid paper is blasé and shameless and corrupt as it runs this stupid offensive heading, Johnson in clear, over £15,000 Caribbean holiday gift. Well, Johnson is not guilty of anything, anywhere, on any subject, no matter how many crimes he commits, how many abuses he perpetrates. That's the point of the Fleet Street liars. Now, can you believe this? These morons, the Daily Boris Graph, have been one of the main festering promoters of cross rail. Now they are having a go at Khan over 19 billion cost of Crossrail. And we are the ones who have said that, and we are the ones who will be the ones to be vindicated for saying that. Now, this is 2021. And Transport for London is a misleading name, but that is the quoted name we are quoting. We don't believe that they are actually serving the people of London. So they shouldn't be called Transport for London. So we are just quoting. And they've admitted in this same piece that for another 10 years at least, up to 2031, passenger demand on Crossrail will be lower, 18% lower than the latest quotable prediction or estimate. Now, this is 2021, and we have been condemning Crossrail, the plot, and especially the plot to dig the hole in Brick Lane, since we got actively organized in December 2003. And we have been the only organization to cover, that is to say, to actually refer to and examine every aspect, every relevant physical, material, financial, social aspect of Crossrail. And we are on the record as having extensively, uniquely written and published evidence-based rejection of every peddling and every peddled benefit by the liars peddling Crossrail. And of course, one of the particular lies perpetrated by the peddlers of Crossrail, based in the corrupt, crooked London Borough of Tower Council. One of the lies perpetrated was that Crossrail would bring benefits. The phrase was, Crossrail will bring benefits to Tower Hamlets. They were lying in order to kind of respond to our daily diagnosis. We did the diagnosis daily, let's say from 2003 up to the end of the parliamentary process, so-called, whereby they de facto, in effect, considered defeat to the Khoodeelaar campaign by abandoning the plot to dig the hole in the middle of Brick Lane. There is no hole. They haven't dug the hole precisely because of our daily, continuous campaign against it. And we did the campaign for 7 years, daily basis. And one of the things we said was to rebut and reject and expose as a lie Tower Hamlets Council crooks claim that Crossrail would bring benefits to the East End of London. They said that in 2004. They said that in 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, up to 2010. No benefits. And as at this date, Friday the 9th of July 2021, there hasn't been any operating Crossrail line either, and there never will be. Because the congenital liar, Boris Johnson, riding high on the stupidity of the Crossrail linked lies, renamed the line as part of his corrupt ingratiation to the Queen and called it Queen Elizabeth line. Despite the ingratiation, despite the embarrassing evidence of the servility on the part of Boris Johnson, there is no Crossrail and there is no Elizabeth line operating as at this date either. Instead, the sequential follower in the post of mayor at the expense of London, Sadiq Khan, is under fire as bill for Crossrail hits 19 billion. This is being admitted by the lying, daily, bribing Boris Johnson graph. And there is nothing. There is no evidence of understanding of the environment, the impact on society, the impact on the economy, and the brazen lying about transport. Because we said 15 years ago, 16 years ago, 17 years ago, that instead of doing the Crossrail in the name of increasing capacity, while capacity is going down, we said that the existing railway networks in and around London, Crossrail meaning circular, in the context that is, the existing railway networks, because there are overland, underground, various forms of railways. The existing networks needed serious, extensive repair. They cannot redo each of those lines, they can only repair them. And they can make the repaired networks as good as new. if they did the job intelligently. So that's what they ignored. But we said that, and we stand by that 17 years on, and we have been vindicated. Because the crucial thing, the passengers, the numbers going down. And as they admit today, the numbers going to go down, keep going down, stay down for another at least 10 years. So that's a substantial piece of accurate factual analysis, expert analysis on a very sophisticated set of technical information and behavior on the part of the public that we've got right, and we get right other analysis of the society and other aspects of the lying and racism and denial and corruption and ignorance peddled in every issue by every title of the collection called Fleet Street. The Daily Beaverbrook is running a story that is almost critical of Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson. This is very rare. This must be treated as a historic kind of occasion today, when any even remotely, subtly remotely critical piece about Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson is being on the front page of the, or in any inside page of the Daily Beaverbrook. Because it has been ecstatic in its denial of the truth about the failures and the lying and the betrayal by the cons, especially as fronted by the congenital liar Boris Johnson. So the list of catastrophic list of incidents of Boris Johnson behaving as unfit for purpose is endless. Here is the piece that the Daily Mirror is running today on page 3, which is About the headline is about Jacob Rees-Mogg, but it's actually devoted to Boris Johnson. It shows that Johnson was not wearing a mask in the car he traveled in. So what the papers are full of is that every single incident, every single behavior by Boris Johnson constitutes an item of evidence of his being unfit for purpose. If that is the case, then logically it should follow that the paper should say that Johnson should be replaced, and that the victims of the decisions that the unfit for purpose what Johnson has been making should be compensated for by the government because of his callous, unfit, dishonest, biased, and plainly unkind and cruelly intended decisions. Will the victims of Johnson's wrongdoing and prejudice and bias and unfitness be compensated and paid due damages? There is no sign of that in the newspapers, even in the Daily Mirror or in the Daily Guardian. And it follows that there won't be. That Johnson would not compensate the victims of his wrong, cruel decisions. And the Mirror is doing this one. This is the biggest one that is being run by any of the papers today. Bring it on now. The front page and back pages. That's the front page and that's the back page. Imitates the center page or two-page spread we have just shown there. Now, the Daily Mirror is overdoing the England football team in a way that the Daily Mail normally does. And the Mirror is not talking today about the impact on the waiting list on cancer referrals, which it says they have doubled. They've doubled as patients flock back to GPs. Now, cancer referrals double as patients flock back to GPs. And the NHS waiting list soars to a record 5.3 million. That's the 5.3 million there. It's the Daily Mail. And the Daily Mail is showing its madness and its hatred for reason as it promotes the propaganda against restrictions and lockdown. And it does a semi-human story about Harry Kane and his wife. But the Daily Mail admits lunacy that one ticket has been sold for £54,000. And there is a piece in the Daily Mail, byline to Tom Leonard, who is shown as being based in New York, not in Haiti. And the piece says there is a pact with the devil in Haiti. Now, this is a topical take on the details of the Kurdish 19-year-old, Kurdish born or Kurdish origin 19-year-old called Daniel or Daniel Hussein, who murdered the two sisters in northwest London. And that he murdered the two women because he had a pact with the devil, who said that he would win the lottery if he murdered 6 women every month or every 6 months or something. So that's the topical use of the pact with the devil that haunts Haiti. And their subheading is Heads on Spikes, a private army of psychopathic dandies, sinister voodoo priests. Why the killing this week of the Caribbean islands president is just the latest twist in its brutal history. Now, not this week, it was only yesterday that this man was reported murdered. So this is Friday, so early hours of Wednesday. They're saying that this is what the time was, the early hours of Wednesday when the president was murdered. Haitian officials said last night that 4 suspects were killed, 6 arrested, and 2 more are still at large, as I said earlier. They believe 2 Haitian Americans are among those arrested, including James Solages, a former bodyguard at the Canadian Embassy in Port-au-Prince, reportedly pretending to be US drug enforcement agents. The gunmen had burst into the home of the President Jovenel Moise and riddled him with bullets, seriously injuring his wife. A diplomat described the assassins as well-trained professionals, killers, commandos. So that's the same place, Haiti, where the Oxfam charity was operating by sexually abusing local girls and women. Haiti, of course, is riddled with fatal violence, deadly violence, has been so for decades. Well, there is one paragraph that sums up the whole thing as far as the president is concerned. This one says that Jovenel Moise was also branded a dictator and faced accusations of campaign fraud and corruption, but used his control of the judicial system to have the charges dismissed. Now, that is what we have said about the British judicial system being corrupt. Now, of course, the numerical comparison between Haiti and Little England is not factually kind of sustainable, not at this time. But the fact that there is a role played by the judiciary in keeping an otherwise known dictator in power and in having most of the charges of corruption and murder and thuggery against the government, so-called, dismissed by the judiciary applies not only to Haiti but also to countries in Asia and Africa. The judiciary is a crucial factor in perpetuating and perpetrating corruption and gangster governance, government and regimes in Asia. We are now moving back to the financial crimes and referring to Boris Johnson's stupidity in rushing to end the restrictions, because Israel was, quote, hailed by the British press, which is more than overly eagerly too prone to hail achievements by the Israeli regime. Now here, they're admitting that Israel's restrictions return as Delta adds fresh twist to virus success story. What they're saying is that the previous achievements lauded for the benefit of the Israeli regime, they've been torn apart and the virus is spreading now. So the financial crimes is not admitting that in the headline. The headline is too supplicatory of the Israeli propaganda machine. It is saying Israel's restrictions return as Delta adds fresh twist to virus success story. When they're admitting that the virus, control of the virus by Israel was a myth, as a sham, they're calling it a success story. That is how trebly corrupt the financial crimes is in covering up the failures of the Israeli state. This is sickness, racist sickness on the part of the financial crimes, capitulating to the Israeli propaganda machine. Now, as we discuss the corruption of the Modi regime in India, the Scottish-based company Cairn Energy is said now to have in effect seized Indian state-owned properties in Paris in an escalation of the tax dispute between Scottish oil producer, that is Cairn Energy, and the government of Narendra Modi. And this piece has got three names in the byline: David Shepard in London, Amy Kazmin in New Delhi, and David Keohane in Paris. Now, Amy Kazmin is a Narendra Modi kind of peddling, promoting Financial Times presidential reporter based in Delhi. So, this detail about this story is that the company which has seized the properties belonging to the Indian government in Paris is still saying that their strong preference remains an agreed amicable settlement. But in the absence of such a settlement, Cairn must take all necessary legal actions to protect the interests of its international shareholders. We shall come back to the piece later. There is a reference to the Cairn Energy and India kind of events in the Lex column on page 24, which is effectively the back page of the financial crimes, the main financial crimes. And it says about the Cairn Energy claim against India. Some of the best views of the Eiffel Tower can be found in Paris's 16th arrondissement. If UK-listed Cairn Energy gets its way, India's officials will lose sightlines to that landmark. Keen to claim a 1.7 billion arbitration award handed down by a Dutch court in December, Cairn has, with the help from French courts, seized India's residential properties there. Nations have every right to control their natural resources, but India's tax attack on Cairn has always looked like sellers' remorse sparked by the group's success with a concession in Rajasthan. Given the price at stake, even a compromise would make a big difference to the oil explorer. Its shares trade below its book value of just 817 million. Reading again, its shares trade below its book value of just 817 million pounds, which is $1.1 billion. The tax dispute has simmered since Cairn sold its last stake in Cairn, India to local miner Vedanta in 2014. The award has given the explorer an impetus to continue its legal battle. Some $70 billion of Indian assets are dotted around the world for Cairn to choose from. Cairn retains the same lawyers as Elliott, a hedge fund that once seized an Argentine naval vessel in a debt dispute. The explorer has taken aim at Air India's aircraft. That is awkward for India, which hopes to privatize and list the airline. India says if Cairn claims its 1.7 billion, it will end up avoiding tax everywhere. The explorer cites a 1995 bilateral India-UK tax investment treaty, which required arbitration for disputes. India terminated all such foreign agreements in 2017. That was suspiciously retroactive. Even so, a 15-year clause makes the treaty valid for any deals done before termination. The government likes a scrap, having battled with Vodafone on a separate €3 billion tax case for years. Its pugnacity has failed to stymie foreign debt investment, foreign direct investment, which climbed to $76 billion in the year to March, up nearly fifth on previous record. Expect a face-saving compromise. Otherwise, a Vandra sign might pop up throughout the City of Lights. Now, this is a piece by the kind of financial crimes gossip column, that is Lex. And it's typically in denial of the dysfunction and the corrupt behavior and corrupt profile of the Indian government fronted by Narendra Modi. Because most of the economic failures in India and most of the failures to do with the provision of service and protection on the pandemic to the 1.5 billion Indians rests with the corrupt, narcissistic, egotistic Narendra Modi, who has been allowed too much impunity by the Indian kind of courts. We come to the Haiti factor, let's say. The Indian judiciary, and as we said yesterday, the Indian Supreme Court is a corrupt court. And as we said previously, it's kind of grandiosely referred to by the corrupt newspapers, corrupt press in India as the apex court. It's not apex for justice. It's not apex for telling the truth. It's not apex for holding the government to account. It's the apex of lying and denial, illegality, and the denial of rights, basic universal rights to most of the people in the northeast of India and the other parts of the federal state of India, where basic human rights are being denied to the many, especially the untouchable, so-called, the Dalits, and of course the Muslims, and the non-Brahmin majority of the hundreds of millions of Hindus themselves. So the Cairn Energy saga is only a tip of the iceberg, where Modi is in form. That is to say, he actually denies liability owed by Indian government. Liabilities owed under contracts to various contractors, investors, and suppliers, either Indian-based or operating in India on behalf of Western companies. Talking about the role played by the apex court, of course, the Supreme Court of the USA is the scene of the majority of the anti-constitutional, unconstitutional moves and maneuvers. The Financial Crimes is heading the second editorial of today as the US Supreme Court's slow right turn. Conservative majority shows signs of shedding its nearly early inhibitions. And the Financial Crimes' editorial language is so completely kind of submissive and opaque and stupid that the first reading is most likely for the most readers to produce no real evidence of anything. And that is the failure of the Financial Crimes, because it doesn't actually recognize the true purpose of having the Supreme Court in the Constitution is the way that it is. The intention by the framers of the American Constitution was to balance things, not to sell out and to uphold rights. Now, the rights, as the original founders and drafters of the various parts of the Constitution intended, were not rights that are being interpreted by the current alleged champions of the Constitution, as personified by Donald Trump and his supporters. And the central importance of process, of dynamism, to keep up with the times has been lost sight of. And this Financial Crimes editorial is written without giving a toss for the international treaties that are coming into being long after the American Constitution was framed. And the fact that the American state as it is now, including the Supreme Court and its various parts of the powers of the state, as is implicit and explicit in the statement called the separation of powers. The Financial Crimes doesn't recognize these international treaties. It doesn't recognize the United Nations, and it doesn't recognize the various duties of the various agencies, executive agencies of the United Nations organization. Now, if that is the case, that is, if the United Nations and its executive agencies are left out of the equation, then there is no force, there is no source of power that can hold in a bearing an erroneous, in denial part of the separation of powers equation, if you like, or metrics in the case of the USA. That is why we have called, and we uniquely called, the Financial Times the Financial Crimes. Because if there is no source of power, and there is no source of holding, or source for holding the powers that be to account. Including the United Nations, that there is no force that can hold the devastatingly, dangerously irresponsible and catastrophic United States parts. And there is no reference, there is no indication in that editorial that such a catastrophe is inevitable as a result of the irresponsible, in denial, moving to the right USA Supreme Court. And the former aide, as he trades himself as, to the Labour Party MP Hetty Harman, Leo McNasty. Now, Leo McNasty is one of Fleet Street's shameless criminals and racists who trades on the fact that he used to be an aide to Hetty Harman. And he's saying, in this two-page spread today, pages 28 and 29, it is dressed as an interview. And the main piece is how the left has bullied Britain into going for woke. And the main heading is, when the world's most influential political pundit came to the UK, he found a tiny but deafening minority has hijacked old debate. But now Frank Lunitz urges, fight back or lose the nation as we know it forever. That's completely racist, and it's one part of the Brexiteering, little English, racist, anti-European, anti-migrant narrative and personality and outlook. And the Daily Mail is stuffed full of the garbage. Now, there is a confession in a piece on page 35 of the Daily Mail today. But that's it, it's a confession, reluctant confession, but it's not really critical of the police, and most certainly not a sign of why the policing has been abolished in this country. And it says a pensioner was murdered by his murderer and then fed to badgers. And it happened in Derbyshire. And the Independent Office for Police Conduct admitted there were safeguarding failures and the opportunity to intervene was missed. Let's go back to the safeguarding, the concept of safeguarding. We have been saying that these 4 Bethnal Green schoolgirls, most immediately recognizable by the name of Shamima Begum, and 2 of our immediate colleagues and 1 of our friends that went to Syria 3 months before she and the other 2 went. Our campaign called the banner of the call, that is and has been that Tower Hamlets, the local council of these 4 girls, schoolgirls, owed them duties under safeguarding children duties, obligations, which it not only missed, as this Derbyshire case reference is using the term missed, they willfully neglected the safeguarding the children duties, Tower Hamlets Council. Ours is the only campaign that has been raising demands for justice to be done to these girls, for the failures and the failings and the negligence by the Tower Hamlets Council. To date, there has been no mention of any of these duties that we have been mentioning by any of the councillors in Tower Hamlets. So when the stupid private lie gives the parasite George Galloway the completely, absolutely unjustified, unwarranted profile that Galloway is due to effect or influence Tower Hamlets, assuming that Afsana Begum, who is due to appear in the Crown Court on the 21st of July, 12 days' time, is found guilty eventually at her trial, whenever that actually takes place, and assuming that she is sent to prison for a year or more. There will be a by-election in Poplar and Limehouse, which is her current kind of parliamentary constituency. This is the private lie item. Poplar uprising. This is dated today. This is dated today, the private lie. And it says Poplar uprising without any reference to the actual Poplar uprising. Well, the entry, Poplar Raids Rebellion, on Wikipedia, says the Poplar Raids Rebellion or Poplar Raids Revolt was a tax protest that took place in Poplar, London, England in 1921. It was led by George Lansbury, the previous year's Labour mayor of Poplar, with the support of the Poplar Borough Council, most of whom were industrial workers. The protest defied government, the courts, and the Labour Party leadership. George Lansbury would later go on to be the leader of the Labour Party. Poplar, now in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets, was one of the poorest districts of London. There was no government support to alleviate the high unemployment, hunger, and poverty in the borough, and the work of Poplar Poor Law Union had to be funded by the borough itself under the Poor Law. Poplar Borough Council's Labour administration, elected in 1919, undertook a comprehensive program of social reform and poor relief, including equal pay for women and a minimum wage for council workers far in excess of the market rate. This program was expensive and had to be funded from the rates. Because Poplar was a poor borough, property rents were low, with liability for local taxation assessed on the basis of a rateable value deriving from rents. The Poplar Borough Council had to set a much higher rate in order to produce the same amount as produced by low rates in a wealthy borough. In addition to the precept for Poplar Poor Law Union, Poplar ratepayers were also charged precepts to pay for the London Borough Council, Metropolitan Council, Metropolitan Asylums Board, and the Metropolitan Water Board. There was a small fund which attempted to correct for the different rate products, but Poplar called for a complete equalization of the rates so that the same rate borough in the same income both to Poplar and to wealthier West London borough. And the councillors are listed there in the So the revolt was supported by a wide number of people. And Lansbury addressed crowds that regularly gathered outside, though the prison bars, neighboring councils threatened to take similar action. And the Hale Street mural is there, and the references are despite the equalization of rates, the dispute regarding the monies paid for outdoor relief would continue for some years until the abolition of the Poor Law Unions. Under the Local Government Act 1929, the responsibility for the provision of outdoor relief transferred from the Popular Poor Law Union to the London County Council, and thereby the financial burden was spread across the entire county of London. The term popularism, always identified closely with Lansbury, became a political term associated with the large-scale municipal relief for the poor and the needy, and also came to be applied generally to campaigns where local government stood against central government on behalf of the poor and the least privileged of society. Now, this is obviously an entry in the Wikipedia, which is not the most socially active or responsible or anti-corruption kind of source. So the piece in the HP source section promoting George Galloway, based on the false reading of Betley and Spen and the false kind of supposition about the inevitability of Afsana Begum being found guilty and being sent to jail for a year at least. And they've got there is a completely false paragraph there, though all of it is false, but this one is more false than the rest. It says Galloway and Lutfur Rahman remain friends from Galloway's Respect Party days. In 2005, Galloway won the neighboring Bethnal Green and Bow when he defeated the sitting Labour MP Una King. He did not contest the seat in 2010. During his campaign for Bethnal Green and Bow, Galloway had much support from the Islamic Forum of Europe, which now calls itself the Muslim Community Association, which was also a key supporter of Lutfur. In a secretly recorded speech at a dinner shortly after his election, Galloway said that the involvement of the IFE had played a decisive role in his win. Could history be about to repeat itself? It could not. The morons responsible for this have got everything wrong. Galloway and Lutfur Rahman were never friends. Lutfur Rahman was a stooge used by other people and used by the IFE according to the dossier submitted to the Labour Party by Helaluddin Elias Abbas, who said that Lutfur Rahman had been brainwashed by the IFE. So for the morons at Private Lie to say that Galloway and Luther Roman were equals, obviously are lying or are being stupidly in ignorance. Luther Roman was not the same as Galloway in terms of the record, because Galloway had a longer, sustainable record as a actually elected, several times elected member of parliament, wherever the constituencies were. Whereas Luther Roman was never really an appointed, elected independently. He was part of the operation of the Islamic Forum Europe, according to Abbasuddin Elias Halal. And Luther Roman is not going to be in a position where people don't have any evidence on the corrupt mayor post, and people don't have any evidence of the corruption and the corrupt propensities on the part of Luther Roman. And in 2005, Luther Roman was not anywhere politically. He was not even a councillor that was mentioned. And he was not put forward as a candidate for the mayor of the corrupt mayor post. He was put forward and maneuvered and manipulated as a candidate by the Islamic Forum Europe. And they're not. And Galloway never mentioned Luther Roman as a friend or a significant political representative for a democratic society in Tower Hamlets. Not even in November 2014. All of this is absent from this stupid private lie. Because November 2014 is when Eric Pickles, the then Secretary of State for Housing, which had the beef for the local councils, condemned Luther Roman on the 4th of November 2014 in the House of Commons. And later in November, either 12th of November or 14th of November 2014, the Water Lily meeting took place in the Mile End Road, where the private lie says that there were 1,000 people attending. But that's a lie. Most of these people were brainless and brainwashed. These people, not only are they illiterate in literal terms, they cannot read the text even in Bangladeshi languages, most certainly not in English, but they cannot understand the various stages and steps politically, let alone the strategy politically. There were people mainly among the people who go to mosques. So they were told, by the likes of Shamsul Haq, as part of the spiritual influence. They were told to go to that meeting as part of their religious duties to support Luther Roman. That is how these people went there. Politically independently thinking people were not there. They could not be there. And they would never be there. We shall continue looking at that stupid piece by the idiots at Private Lie in later parts. of all the mosques situated in Tower Hamlets, there is not one single mosque which is run democratically or in accordance with the real rules and principles and ethics and morality of the Sharia. These are access to these mosques is controlled by a cabal, in each case, a cabal of anti-Islamic operatives and abusers of the control to the mosques. And the fact that it is so is evident in the very serious amounts of money proportionately spent in litigation among various rivals to the control of the mosques or to the control of the access to the mosques. The fact that there have been litigation at all is unprecedented. In ordinary sense, in Muslim countries, mosque committees are not anywhere nearly as full of hatred and hostility as has been seen in the cases of the committees concerning the mosques in Tower Hamlets or in other parts of the Little England. And so therefore the private lie stupidly ignores all of that. That is the reality. So the people who would have gone to the shebang organized to create the idea that Lutfur Rahman was genuinely supported in Tower Hamlets against the measures being taken at that time by Eric Pickles. That impression was false. And the other thing is that there was no speaker from Tower Hamlets at that event at the Water Lily. The only speaker was Galloway, Ken Lying Still Livingstone. These were the same people who featured as among the main speakers of the Brady Center on Saturday, the 6th of February 2010. So the suggestion that Lutfur Rahman had a independently wide support among ordinary intelligent members of the community is an absolute criminally conceived lie. And that lie was a lie in 2010. It was a lie in 2014. It was a lie on the 6th of May this year, when they spiritually influenced electors or spiritually influenced parts or persons among the electorate in Tower Hamlets were shown to have cast their votes to retain the corrupt post of executive elected mayor in Tower Hamlets. We shall, of course, continue to update and examine this corrupt event on the 6th of May 2021. Tower Hamlets Council is one of the most corrupt local councils in England, if not the most corrupt councils. And in April 2006, I recorded the entirety of the so-called press conference by George Galloway, held in a restaurant which is now no longer owned or controlled by Azmal Hussain, but it was at the time. And Galloway said that in his 30 years in politics, he had never come across a local council as corrupt as Tower Hamlets Council. So we shall be updating based on that recollection and reference, updating on the corrupt and stupid, ignorant promotion of parasite Galloway contained in the HP source section on page 13 of the latest edition of Private Eye, which item is wrongly and ignorantly, corruptly and dishonestly headed popular uprising. There is not going to be an uprising in Tower Hamlets for Galloway. Most certainly not. So we shall be continuing in the next editions.